1,432 miles on it. James, what do we got going here?
Well, the first thing we had to do was try to see if we could open the door, and that didn't work out. So what we did with the blue one is we had to get the 12-volt battery up to unlock the door. And we found out that the battery that was in the Tesla was kind of run down. It was about 2 volts.
So in this case, there was no problem getting access to the battery because it doesn't have a hood.
No, it did not come with a hood.
Well, there we go.
So,
we're a little light on a hood.
Yep. So initially we put it on a charger, and that worked for a little bit. We got the door open and we could see the screen. But then after that, we had it on the charger and it wouldn't come on. Mm-hmm. So took that battery out. We're seeing if we can charge that to get it back up. So by the time we got a battery, a different battery, it kind of hooked it all up. And as you can see, we got the screen on, doors open, charge port open. So
let's open the charge port.
Yes, sir.
Voila. Open it again. It closed back.
Oh. There she is.
I will insert the Tesla charge plug now. What's going on?
Saying charging stopped, 84%.
How many percent?
84.
Shoot me a video of that.
Yes, sir.
Screen. And charging stopped. That means it won't grow.
And then when I hit the start charging in the top right hand corner of the screen, it hits up the notification that says might need service.
It might need service. Now the other one, we were able to charge, right?
Yes, sir.
Once we got the 12 volt going.
Mm-hmm.
This one, we got the screen up, but it won't charge.
No, sir.
And it says it might need service.
Just a little bit, as you can see.
What's that in the steering wheel there?
Oh, it looks like our airbag.
An airbag, and there's
one on the floorboard
one
there.
Down there too. What happens when the airbags go off?
I'd say it disconnects the battery.
You know what? I bet there's a pyro fuse in the battery that when you blow the airbags, it sends a little signal to this, and it blows it as well.
And where is that located in the car?
It's in the battery pack under the pin house.
Okay.
What I'd like you to do is to remove the pin house lid, and there's a couple of braces there you'll have to take loose.
All right.
And take the pin house off and measure your resistance between the two ends of this thing, which is located to the rear and in the center. And if it's not pretty close to zero, put this one in.
Yes, sir.
And things might get better. I'm just guessing. Don't know. I'm the last guy on the internet who could be wrong. Stay with us. Okay. Today we're going to talk about the Tesla Model 3 battery. I know a lot of you are curious about that. I am too. We're getting smarter as we go. In our original disassembly, I told you that I didn't really care about what was in the battery, and I wasn't going to take one apart to show you. Actually, I do care. And I'm gonna, but I'm not going to take one of mine apart. I found a guy on eBay selling a chunk of Model 3 battery, and so I bought it at a stupid level of expense. Although things are getting better, we had no Model 3 batteries on eBay, and there's currently 3 of them listed for between $15,000 and $16,000. We've got people taking out Model 3 batteries for their solar system with no known way to use them. I don't know what they're going to do with them. Maybe somebody's putting together something I don't know about. But they are starting to appear on eBay. The price is dropping on them, and I expect for them to drop rather precipitously. I had an interesting thing, though. I did offer one of the guys $10,000 for his Model 3 battery that he wanted $15,999 for. I figured they'll be on there for a while, no takers, and then, why not go ahead and sell it to me? I could use it. I think I can use it. I'm not sure it'll ever be useful, and I have some already. But I offered him $10,000 for it. He responded with a counteroffer of $1,300. I said, man, that's unusually generous, but I'm going to take it. And I immediately agreed to his contractually binding offer, which he's going to be very surprised is going to be litigated. But in any event, he had sent me a counteroffer of $1,300, $750 shipping, $2,000 total, and I accepted. And I paid for it immediately. And then it got canceled. Would you believe he canceled the sale? I didn't even know you could do that on eBay. And so I called eBay and had a delightful conversation with Kate. She said, Mr. Rickard, you're one of our concierge something or others. I said, what does that mean? She says, well, you're kind of special. Do you have any idea how long you've been on eBay? I said, actually, I do, dear. I'm sure you don't. She says, no, I've got it right here. I said, does that track back to when they were selling Pez dispensers on a BBS system? She said, no, not that eBay. On this one, you've been on here kind of since the beginning. I said, no, way before the beginning. And anyway, she apologized for the execrable behavior of one of their sellers. But my point is, they're starting to appear, and they're falling in price. There's also 16 Model 3s on Copart this week, up from 13 the previous week. And again, the prices are dropping precipitously. And so I did buy this chunk of a Model 3 battery to take the opportunity to take a look at a little bit inside. Assuming I wouldn't be terribly surprised. Not terribly, but surprised. This is the chunk here. And one thing I had not noticed previously was there's a manifold in the end of it that has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of these channels in it. And would you believe on the other end of the battery, since I have some whole, I found another set of manifold and another set of channels, and 7 of them there. In the Model S battery, they have one inlet, and it winds serpentine fashion through the pack, and one outlet. This doesn't have that. They have a manifold, and then 7 of these coolant channels, and they run the entire length of the module. And so that's actually a much better, I think, cooling strategy. There are 2 rows of batteries between the 2 rows of channel. And so every cell has a part of this channel. This is a soft aluminum type thing, and it's covered in some sort of a plastic coating. And it's completely non-conductive through the coating, but quite conductive through the aluminum in the middle. And that's your coolant channel. This is what we've been calling intumescent goo. Lots of theories about that being a fire retardant and so forth. It's a very cheap, crumbly, soft I don't know what it is, composite of some sort. It might have some fire retardant properties, but it looks to me to be padding. You have a plastic outside, a plastic lid, and it just looks to me like it covers the cells and protrudes through this plastic grid on top, and then it comes in contact with the plastic on top, and I think it's just padding to make the whole thing a little more robust and resilient to damage. Again, the key seems to be these coolant channels, and each cell is attached to it with a gray plastic, I think plastic, or a gray adhesive. It's like JB Weld. You can't cut this off with a box knife. You can't chisel it off. It's extremely hard. The only way we can get it off of them is to take a grinder with a wire wheel and wear it off to clean up one of these cells. This is, of course, 21 millimeters in diameter and 70 millimeters long. It's like a shotgun shell. Here's to compare a Model S battery, which is 18 by 65. And that's the batteries. There's 46 in each cell. Let's talk a little bit about capacity, because it's kind of squishy, and you'll see all kinds of numbers all over the internet. I can only say that by daily use and measurement, it is my belief that the 235 amp hour Tesla module is about 220 amp hours of usable capacity. That works out with 74 Model S cells per cell to right at 3 amp hours for an 18650 cell. If we had the same 220 amp hours here, we would have exactly the same size battery, or very close. We have 46 of these, and that implies a capacity of 4.8 amp hours. And that's my official initial estimate. I have some equipment coming, a really neat little tiny constant current load that I will actually do some capacity testing on this probably next week. But we may not even, the only way we would even video it is if it comes up different. I've been doing this so long, it's 4.8 amp hours, guys. But if it's any different, I will, video it and show you. And maybe I'll show you anyway because of the discharge curve. We actually took these apart to show you what's inside. Both of them, as it so happens. Let's take a look. Here we are with our Model 3 battery. I have very patiently peeled away the entire metal can, starting with this crimp at the top with a pair of my trusty nippers. We have 30 pairs of these. Would you believe that's the only one really in existence? I only ever find one. We wound up with a jelly roll of copper secured by a couple of plastic pieces of tape. And we're going to start unrolling this at this point here on the table. This is copper, and on one side it has cathode material, and on the other it has anode. Let's see if I can pull the trash can part apart here. This is the electrolyte soaked separator. It's a plastic separator. It will not conduct. And I've got copper in here. And on this side, I think we'll find aluminum. With our material. Here's some material and our copper foil, which is our current collector. We're just going to start slowly unwinding this to see how big it is. It gives off the smell of peaches, or pears, I guess, actually. And that is ethylene carbonate, an organic solvent. There's usually 4 ethylene carbonate, dimethyl carbonate, diethylene carbonate. One other, I can't remember. In these non-aqueous organic solvents is a lithium carbonate salt, usually LiFP6, and that is the free lithium ions in the electrolyte. And that electrolyte, whew, boy, that smells like EC. That's what a failed battery smells like. And Richard's betting 20 inches. He's looking pretty good right now. And we are just unrolling this to see how much area we have in a Model 3 2170 battery. I would say the electrolyte, you're talking about a half dropper, teaspoon dropper, maybe a full dropper that is added after the jelly roll is inserted in the can, and that liquid electrolyte is quickly sopped up by the porous, non-conductive plastic separator. It's like a plastic garbage bag, but it's thinner, I would say, and it's porous, and it actually forms kind of a little plastic mat.
Looks like there's kind of a rip in it.
Well, that's because of me unrolling it. We're pretty much at the end of the trail here. Now, as you can see, this is one long thing. So, let's see. Hold that.
Yes, sir.
Let me see if we can separate it. And go that way with it. And that goes like that. And so that's our total length of the wind. I have no idea how long that is. Somebody get us a tape measure. We don't want to touch the tape measure to that. I don't think it'll conduct, but what are you looking at here?
69 inches.
69 inches, okay. Whoops.
You can smell it.
Yes, you can. This was not a fully discharged battery. In an act of abject heroism, I have dismembered a fully functional, actually nearly fully charged battery. In an act of stoic heroism, which is a term I prefer over mild stupidity. This stuff is probably not good to breathe. It won't really hurt you. It's kind of like
Emissions.
carbonic acid and ethylene and ethanols, sort of like a Jack and Coke. But that is what the battery is made up of. And these foils, let's see if I can get a better look at this one. Well, this is all just material here. Is foil with a thin, fragile mat of material like heavy offset printing ink printed on it. And that makes your cathode and your anode of your battery, which you separate. In this case, it appears to be a double layer of polyethylene, just like a kitchen trash bag, but a lot thinner. You wouldn't want to carry this to the curb. You'd wind up with your
Trash everywhere.
breakfast stuff all over the driveway. And that is the inside of a Model 3 battery. And this is the cathode material here. The anode material is on the copper, which is simply in contact. This whole can is your negative anode that the copper is in contact with, and the centerpiece is the tab is connected to that somewhere else for the
Here in the middle.
cathode. Yes, there's our cathode. And let me remove this separator. And you can see the cathode there. This is connected to the top centerpiece. And this end piece here has a little tab. Let's see if we can make this go away without destroying it. And this is the copper foil with that attached to it. This has the material on both sides of a foil. Well, this does too. So each foil, here's your anode, copper. I think this is aluminum. But it might also be copper. And that is your cathode material here, which is a lithium, nickel, cobalt, manganese, aluminum oxide, or NCA material. And it's pretty hot stuff. This is graphite primarily, but rumored to be that Panasonic has developed a method of embedding extremely tiny particles of silicon in the graphite. Silicon has about 8 times the intercalation space as pure graphite, but then it swells about 4 times greater volumetrically, and that makes it very short-lived material. But by grinding very fine silicon powder and basically covering it with graphite, they can, and it's not a very high percentage of silicon, they can increase the capacity of the same amount of material for the anode. And this is the cathode side, and this is the anode here, the negative. Why is in the battery the anode the negative and the cathode the positive? It's a historical accident and a religious discussion I will not be drawn into at this time or at any time for any reason. But in batteries, the anode is the negative side, and the cathode is the positive side. It has to do with the current being internal rather than external. Or so battery people believe. And that's fine. It's 50-50 shot. It always was. It was on diodes. So that's why I don't get into it. It's just, remember that the anode is the negative and the cathode is the positive. This is our cathode side, and that's our anode. Now let's take an actual accurate measurement stick. The yardstick, I call them.
Alright, we're at the end.
And I got 34 inches. And I bet if we measure, I'm just measuring the active material here.
Okay.
I think we're about 34 inches again. So that is 68 inches. Is that what Richard said?
69.
Yeah, well, that was counting some bare copper. So 68 inches. And of course, we're not quite 70 millimeters wide. Do we have a more accurate stick? I've got 2.5 inches here. Do you have something that measures millimeters or centimeters or something we can relate?
2.5. Caliper. I think we got that somewhere. Okay.
Let's see what you have here. Silly millimeter longer. This is 61, 2, 3. I would say 63. 63 or 64 millimeters, which, of course, you get that wider structure. The 18650s are only 65 millimeters tall completely, and so they'll be narrower and I believe shorter, and we're going to take a look at that and undo an 18650 and see how that comes out. Let's see. I've got some right here next to my heart. Oh, here they are. These are also Tesla batteries, but these are the smaller 18650s. Of course, they have a vent and a button on top, and so that makes it a little easier to deal with. But that's what we're going to do on the 18650. And I've asked the guys to come up with some sort of a mounting board or something to glue all this down on it, to where we can see the difference between the Model 3 and the Model S area for the battery. And that's kind of the story on what's inside an 18 or a Model 3 2170 battery. For some reason, whenever I show this, everybody's disappointed. I never am. They are magic rocks. This is what causes a car, a 3,600 pound car, to travel 310 miles. It can store electrical potential between these two materials. And it is the printed black material, the magic rock, that enables this. The rest of it's mechanics. The copper foil is a current collector. That's how you can take off the current. The same with the cathode material. You have a can to contain them. Separators are simply to prevent electron flow within the battery. The only flow in the battery is lithium ions. There is no electron flow between them because of the plastic bag separators. And as you can see, they're thinner than onion skin. They're just very lightweight plastic. The holes are so small that you can't even see them. But it actually acts as a wick to hold the electrolyte that is the contact between the two layers of materials. And if you put a positive on the cathode and a negative on the anode, you can take electrons from the cathode side and move them to the anode side, and that causes lithium ions that are the easiest thing in the material to give up an electron. It has one electron in its outer valence band, and it's not very securely attached. So when by charge you draw off an electron from the cathode, that releases a lithium ion, a lithium atom lacking one electron into the battery. Now, we always talk about that traveling to the anode. It doesn't travel to the anode. Come on, guys. It has a positive charge, and it deintercalates from the cathode and moves into the electrolyte, and it displaces one of those LiFeP6 salt atoms, which has also got a positive charge, and that displaces the one next to it. And so this little thin separator, by charge, it displaces positively charged ions until it bumps the ones that are already closest to the anode side into intercalate into the graphite material. And it's held there by what? The electron charge that we sucked from the cathode and went around and put on the copper here. And now the lithium ion, the positive ion, and the negatively charged electron in the current collector, that moves into the graphite. And there is no covalency. They do not bond, but just the attraction holds the lithium, positively charged lithium ion between two layers of the octahedral crystalline structure of the graphite, and in this case, also silicon. And they hold each other there, captive. Now, when you release the electrons from the anode through an external circuit. They're going to move away, and the lithium ion loses its place, moves back into the electrolyte, bumper cars of charges, and one of them pops into the cathode material in the discharge and recombines with with an electron from the current collector. This is a much more complicated crystalline structure. I'm more familiar, of course, with the lithium iron phosphate tetrahedral crystalline structure. This is what I call everything but the kitchen sink. They stuck everything that they ever heard of working in a battery into this cathode material, including nickel, cobalt, manganese, aluminum, and I don't know, maybe some shit they had in their pockets or something, all in this material in the hopes of improving the capacity of the battery, and they have. These are firecrackers, and in an act of abject heroism, I have just disassembled it by hand using a pair of nippers, and it was a fully charged battery, by the way. This was not an old damaged one. I went over and did it by the garage door so I could throw the whole thing into the snow if this went bad on me, but it didn't. You just got to be very patient and work it a bit at a time. I got a couple of sparks going there a couple times, but very minor ones. So are you disappointed?
No.
It's just black gunk printed on aluminum foil and rolled up like a Tootsie Roll pop and stuck in a can. That's why I call it a magic rock. It is inert looking. It's mechanically deficient in design. There's nothing there. It's just a rolled up, and this material makes it a rock, but it's a magic rock. These things hold 5 amp hours probably at 3.6 volts. That's 18 watt hours of power in one of these things. And in the Model 3, that renders about 75 kilowatt hours. There's 46 of these in a cell, and there's 2 modules with 23 voltage cells, and 2 of them with 25 voltage cells. And so winds up being a shit pot full of them, but they're rocks. They're rocks with wires hooked up to them. The current collector is just a big flat wire to collect current. The copper does nothing. It has nothing to do with the aluminum. It's like wire. This material, separated by a non-conductor, soaked with a lithium ion electrolyte, are interacting. By the way, everybody wants this to be a chemical reaction. It is not. There is no covalency. No atom shares an electron with another atom. Doesn't happen in any of the materials in here. Doesn't happen. There's no chemical change. This is a flow of ions from one crystalline structure to the other based on charge. And it simply, they call it a rocking chair mechanism. They simply move back and forth. As you charge and discharge the battery, you're moving positive lithium ions, or cations more properly, from one crystalline structure to the other. And it intercalates in there. It's held in there by charge, not by any covalency of electrons. There's no recombination of materials here. No material changes into another material. That isn't happening. It is not a chemical battery. It's simply fields and charges moving back and forth. And really, there is no electron ripped from the lithium, except in the formative stage of the battery. The electron being on the aluminum cathode is enough to hold the positively charged lithium ion in the structure. And if you move it over to the copper and it migrates into that crystalline structure, the carbon takes on a negative charge, and that holds the positively charged lithium ion there. And so they move back and forth by charge. And that's why they can hold a large charge, is they're moving a large quantity of lithium ions back and forth inside the battery. But they're magic rocks. You put power in them, and later you can take them out. And they don't self-discharge. You can take them out 2 years later, and they'll still be there. They store electrical energy. And between the magic rocks of photovoltaic cells, again, no moving parts, no noises, no hissing. They don't give up anything. They don't wear out. They're one magic rock that can convert sunlight into electron flow, electricity. And this is the other partner magic rock we need in this equation, and that is a battery that you can put that electron flow into, that electrical energy into it, and it will happily hold it essentially forever. I won't say there's no self-discharge. There's not enough self-discharge for you to ever be able to measure with any test equipment you can afford. And so, practical matter, it doesn't matter. And then later you can use that power to drive an electric motor and run the car. Or this time of year, we're actually more interested in running the heater. And if we can also drive, that would be fine. If we have to sit still, I want to be warm. And so that's... but I thought a number of you have wanted to see the inside of a Model 3 battery. I have seen some other descriptions of this. They were interesting to me, but not because they were useful. YouTube is so entertaining. And the thing people think about this stuff is so magic. But it is magic. These are magic rocks. The battery is a magic rock that holds energy, and the photovoltaic cell is a magic rock that produces it. Actually, it converts it from solar photon flow, if you will, a flow of light energy. It converts light into electrical energy, which we can then store in these batteries. This is the future, guys. This is how it works. And it has no mechanical moving parts. It's lasts a long time. It doesn't make very much noise. I invite all of you to go up on the roof and listen to your photovoltaic panels, see what you come up with. But I'm going to predict you'll be disappointed. And if you hear anything from your batteries, be very afraid. They're not supposed to make noise. If they start making noise, this is for Rich Rebuilds and some of the other guys out there. If your batteries start talking to you, you don't need to stay and listen. It doesn't matter what they say. You want to be 100 yards away. And so that's the inside of a Model 3 battery. We'll maybe unpeel a 18650 if I get up the nerve, and see how that goes. Stay with us. Do 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 do. Okay, we're back. And let's go over here to the whiteboard and show something I've drawn. Actually, I didn't draw it. This is actually the strips coming out from the Model 3 2170 cell. And these are the strips coming out of kind of a dried out 18650. We lost parts of this one. But you get the idea. Here is a thing here. If we join them at the two ends and we rolled it up from that direction, this would wind up in the middle, and that's the cathode. And this one would wind up at the end, and that's the anode. And this copper on the ends would be on the outside, and so would be in contact with the inside of the can, and the can is your negative anode. And the center tap is your positive cathode. And the Model S 18650 is no different, but here you can see the difference in sizes. Some other measurements. The Model 3 2170 weighs 70 grams. The Model 18650 for the Model S is 45 grams. Now, as a whiskey maker, I kind of knew how this was going to come out. Cylinders are kind of magic. And here's what Elon Musk has done with this really kind of cunning resizing thing. We're 3 millimeters longer. We're 5 millimeters, or we're 3 millimeters bigger around and 5 millimeters longer. That's not very much. But as far as our volume of the device, the Model S is 660 cubic millimeters. The Model 3 is 970. That's a 60% increase in volume of the device, and it accounts for how much longer our strips are for this. Our capacity is a function of the thickness and the area of our anode material and our cathode material. And we can simply have a larger jelly roll by having that larger volume. As I said, I think these are 4.8 amp hours and these are 3. And that leaves your Model S as being 10.8 watt hours for one of these batteries. And that works out at 45 grams to 240 watt hours per kilogram. And that's what I believe they are. The Model 3, by contrast, is 4.8 amp hours and 17.3 watt hours. But somehow that works out to 247 watt hours per kilogram. Now, you probably can't see the fine print here, but I think the 85K Model S pack is 605 kilograms, 76,723 watt hours, which corresponds very closely to what the motherboard reports to me on our controller. Whatever 85K you think you bought, that's what the battery thinks it is. And that works out to 126.7 watt hours per kilogram on the pack. And one of the key issues you have with electric vehicles is the ratio of actual battery cell to your battery construct. I would say the Renault influenza battery is the worst I ever saw, but they had built it like a tank so you could put it in and take it out automatically for the Better Place battery swap. But that's an important ratio is how much structure you have to have for the BMS in the battery and mounting the battery in the car. And then the other one is the total weight of the car, in the case of the Model S, 4,800 pounds, to the power that the battery provides. In the case of the Model 3, we have 1,054 pounds. We measured it, 479 kilograms. And all of this works out to 76,397, which is not the same as 76,723, but it's real close. And that works out to 159.5 watt hours per kilogram pack. Well, things are going the right direction. We have 240 watt hours per kilogram. It goes to 247, a little increase there. But then we go from 126.7 to 159.5 on the pack, meaning less packaging per active cell. Now, why am I impressed by that? Well, it's a significant increase, but the Model S has a junction box, a charger, and a DC to DC converter out in the car. The Model 3 has all that built into the battery pack, and it's still much lower ratio of pack to battery cell than the Model S. This is what I'm talking about being extremely advanced engineering. And it's not the big things that you're after. It's the little things that kill you. And they have mastered the little things at every step to where the result is a significantly more powerful pack per kilogram, which has to be moved down the road and takes energy. And the other result is we have the same size battery pushing a 3,600 pound car we had pushing a 4,800 pound car. That's a big gain. So you have a big gain in the ratio of car to battery. You have a big gain in ratio of battery structure to battery cells. And you even have a gain at the cell level. And so I think all of that's very interesting. The chemistry of the cell. I don't even really want to talk about this. For one thing, I don't know. But you have to put that in context. Me not knowing is very different from all the people you see on YouTube and Seeking Alpha that don't know. By comparison, they would think I really did know. I'm the only one that thinks I don't know. Elon maybe thinks I don't know. The rest of these clowns would think I did know compared to them when they're trying to tell you how it is because they don't have a clue. But I'll talk about it, understand that I reserve the right to revise and extend my comments into the congressional record, if you'll allow it, Mr. Speaker. The battery cell is commonly referred to as an NCA cell, and that stands for nickel, cobalt, aluminum. That's what it stands for, is nickel, cobalt, and aluminum. The cell is actually a nickel, cobalt, aluminum oxide, and that is not referring to the cell, but just the cathode material. And the anode is graphite, and I believe a little bit more silicon than perhaps previously known. And the reason I say that is some public statements by Tesla and Elon referring to the use of cobalt. Everybody talks about there being a worldwide shortage of lithium and cobalt for batteries. And I've seen extensive financial analysts go on and on in huge calculations of global supply and demand and pricing, starting with completely erroneous data and not even the right material at the start. That they don't know what they're talking about. It's comic, but in a kind of a sadly ironic way of how can people be so freaking stupid. We talk about batteries at the theory level, and we talk about things like aluminum and nickel and graphite, and we're perfectly free to do that, and it's all true as far as the physics of the battery goes. But that does not get you a manufactured battery. That's not what they're doing. When you say graphite and a carbon lattice structure, it is graphite and it is a carbon lattice structure. But if you go to build it, the battery material they use is not graphite. It's not flake graphite. It's called a, well, what is it called? It's spherical graphite, spherical purified graphite, and that is a covered or a encapsulated PSC. Well, I can't. The memory is always the second thing to go. It's a purified spherical graphite carbon. Graphite, 60 cents a pound. The spherical form of that, which means very tiny, micro or even nanoparticle size pieces of graphite carbon crystalline structure, but in very tiny beads or pieces of microscopic powder. And that is what's put on the anode, but it takes about twice as much flake graphite to make the same volume of spherical graphite. It has to be further processed. If you want to Google some of this stuff, use battery chemicals, battery grade. And that's what they actually use to build batteries as opposed to just buying graphite. Graphite covers a multitude of sins and it has a lot of industrial uses. And so getting a good supply of spherical graphite is somewhat different from getting a supply of graphite, but in either case, they use so much graphite that electric vehicles, if everybody drove one, can't make much of a dent in the graphite supply. Lithium. I'm going to make a statement you're not going to like, but we do not use lithium batteries at all. I read a paper this week from Ling Hu at the University of Maryland about a alumina oxide use with garnet electrolyte on solid-state batteries that increase the conductivity through them by about 5 times. One of the problems you have with solid-state batteries is they can't make enough current. Your power density is your ability to put out power, and your energy density is your ability to store energy. With electric vehicles, we need to do both, but it's kind of a trade-off. If you make your cathode thicker, and this is printed like on a printing press, that's the anode. On the cathode, if you make it thicker, it'll store more energy. But it makes it harder for the lithium ions to intercalate into the tetrahedral crystalline structure of the anode. And it slows its ability to make current. If you make it thinner, you increase the amount of current you can make at any one time, but you've decreased the energy. And so, like almost everything in batteries, it's a trade-off. Ling Hu was working on a way to increase the power delivery of solid-state batteries and come up with an alumina oxide coating for the garnet ceramic electrolyte. And a guy named John B. Goodenough of the University of Austin, Texas, vetted the paper and said, yea, verily it was so, and he liked the idea. Now, he and a woman from Portugal are doing what I think is the best work, again, on batteries, and that is a lithium metal anode. You would typically use a sulfur cathode with that, but it has about 4 or 5 times the energy density of the batteries we use now. And the problem is lithium metal makes dendrites that tend to perforate separators and so forth and set batteries on fire within just a few uses, and that's a problem. But if you coated them in a ceramic or a glass-like structure, that would prevent that. But then you have the problem of conductivity and the ability to deliver current, and Liang Hu has apparently come up with a way to address that. So solid-state batteries are kind of, again, hopeful. But that is a lithium metal battery. It's a lithium battery. These are lithium-ion batteries. The total amount of lithium in this battery is about 2% of it. And again, it's not really lithium, it's lithium hydroxide and a lithium carbonate. Lithium carbonate is a crystalline salt of lithium. And lithium hydroxide is a aqueous form of that, and that's the LiPF6 that I was telling you about, was in the electrolyte, the liquid electrolyte. But all that put together is 2% of the battery. And lithium hydroxide is $7.32 a pound right now as of the end of December. And lithium carbonate is $5.45. And there's no problem getting it. And if all the car companies in the world make lithium batteries, I don't think it's going to be hard to get. They can't scale that up as fast as the lithium miners can scale it up, and there's plenty of lithium out there. There's a big lithium mine about 120 miles south of Tesla's Gigafactory in Nevada. They don't even buy lithium from those guys. It's too expensive, like another 50 cents or something. So it could easily be converted to provide these kinds of lithium. Everybody goes on about cobalt. Cobalt has actually suffered a 30% price decrease. It's about $17.20 a pound. Tesla has bragged that they're down to about 3% cobalt in the anode and going to 0%. I'm not sure how they're going to do that. Maybe with more silicon, I'm not sure. But that's their mission. And cobalt has some supply problems in that it's poisonous. And most of it is dug out of the ground by hand by children in the Congo who sicken and die by the time they're 25 from working in cobalt mines. And so this is not considered good. Tesla gets their cobalt in Canada. It's done by machines, operated by adults. And it's not really a problem, but we don't really have any cobalt in the United States. So it's kind of a strategic mineral. And it's just not something to be dependent on. And it's poisonous. So there's a lot of reasons to get rid of cobalt. The price actually isn't any of them. Aluminum's 84 cents a pound. Again, this is aluminum oxide, or sometimes referred to as alumina, and it's usually a particle type thing. Now, most battery companies buy the cathode materials as a already prepared powder. Tesla and Panasonic probably don't. They have their own magic sauce, and so I don't know exactly what these things are, but we can piece together some clues. Mr. Musk has said a couple of things about his batteries, and one of them is that the cost of the battery is largely a function of the cost of the nickel. Now, how could that be? Nickel's $5 a pound. Well, yes and no. First, 85% of the cathode is nickel. 3% cobalt, 2% lithium. That leaves about 10% for the aluminum oxide. Manganese, if it's in there at all, is a trace element of it. I think they're putting a little in there, and that's part of the way they're getting rid of the cobalt. But I don't know that. I'm making that up. So why is it, and Elon Musk has actually said that he would like you to think of the battery not as a lithium battery, but as a nickel graphite battery. And that's because 85% of the cathode is nickel, and 99.9% of the anode is graphite. And they're roughly each half the battery. As you can see, not exactly, but approximately. Here's the problem with the nickel. Nickel's $5, but nickel sulfate is $45 a pound. 45 actually, as of December 18th, $45.45 for nickel sulfate. Well, what's nickel sulfate? Nickel sulfate is actually what they use to do electroplating. It's not nickel metal, it's a solution for electroplating. But in the case of battery materials, it again, like almost everything we're talking about, is a crystalline structure. It's not a metal at all. It's a crystalline salt of nickel. And it's not $5, it's $45 a pound. And so he's quite correct. Both by volume and by dollar, nickel is the most expensive thing in the battery by a lot. And it's also 85% of the cathode. And so Musk can be quite literal, and he does not explain himself nor suffer fools very well. He would like you to think of it as a nickel graphite battery, and the battery cost, which he is pledged, and I believe they are nearing very closely to $100 a kilowatt hour on the cell level, not at the pack level, and to reduce the amount of cobalt to zero. And he'd like you to think of the battery as nickel graphite, and as the price being largely a function of the spot price of nickel, but he's talking about nickel sulfate, not nickel metal. It's a little different. And so that's kind of my presentation on the batteries. We'll have a few of these. I'll have the guys clean off the glue. We'll sell them for a stupidly high price on the website. But that's largely, I don't expect you to bring your skateboard with them or they have any use. Some of you just want a Model 3 battery to show to your friends. You should buy one and put it in a glove box, and so you can show them this is what a battery looks like. And we're not going to have enough to fool with, but we'll chop out a few of these, clean them up, put them in the store for $20 a piece, which is a ridiculous price, but should make it worthwhile for the boys to run the wire wheel over them and Rich to put them in a box as a souvenir. We'll get Danu to sign them if you want. But it's just, we did get a few in. I wanted to take this apart and see if the guesses were largely true. And they are. There's another little separator in here between some of the outside of the belts and the batteries. I don't know what it's for. It doesn't map to anything. So a lot of this looks to me like sound deadening and padding, the blue stuff. Again, that's subject to review, but it looks cheap, but it's kind of flexible, and it takes up some bulk and pads out these relatively thin but tough plastic sides and tops and so forth without having the plastic resting directly on the fusible links that connect the batteries. I assume you all know it's the same as the Model S. Now, the cap is depressed, so there's no button. You can't stack these and make anything. But again, each cathode is connected to the system with a very fine wire that if that battery cell shorts or goes bad and draws too much current, it's in parallel with 45 other ones, and they will quickly run a huge amount of current through a shorted one, or they would if that little piece of wire didn't immediately melt and completely take the battery out of the circuit. Once that little piece of wire melts and there's not enough volume to it to do anything, it's just like a tiny fuse that blows. That battery is completely inert, and you would probably never know it driving the car. You have 46ths of a cell there remaining, and you're not going to be able to tell it with test instruments. So that's one of the key strategies to protection in the Tesla battery. Let me show you some just gathered up stolen clips of what one of these cells does under fire. It's so rich it isn't just you. People are blowing these things up left and right. Let's talk a little bit about safety. I'm not a safety Nazi. We showed people for years how to run an electric car without a BMS of any kind. Well, except for a JLD 404, a couple pieces of equipment. But minimizing it. And we never, that I know of, had anyone who was an EVTV viewer ever burn up a car. Meanwhile, it's going on all over the country. These are different kinds of cells, and they have different properties. They have our lithium iron phosphate cells had about 105 to 108 watt hours per kilogram. These are 247. You're putting twice the energy in the same space. And there are trade-offs to that. One of them is in the cathode materials. The lithium iron phosphate has a temperature at which it gives off free oxygen and begins to burn freely and fuel itself. In the 320 to 350 degrees centigrade range, these are more like 150 to 180. And what that means is this is just more volatile. It's the difference between C4 and nitroglycerin. One of them you can treat like Play-Doh, and the other one, and trust corporals to handle in their knapsack. And the other one is nitroglycerin. If you look at it wrong, you could blow yourself up. And this is of the latter format. Tesla has a huge motivation not to burn cars to the ground. Now, there's 750 internal combustion cars burn up every day. You could have every single internal combustion car in the U.S. burst into flames simultaneously. If a Tesla burn up at the same time, the only thing you would see in the news is an electric car burns to the ground. They're completely oblivious to the constant threat of fire and explosion in a gasoline car, but hypersensitive to electrical fires. And they are impressive fires. So from their beginning, way before the Roadster, their first prototype burned up in the factory. They incidentally had the batteries in the doors, and a couple of them were in the car at the time. And that's how Tesla got the batteries underneath the car. They're no longer in the doors. They're a battery company who demonstrate their batteries in an automobile. Now they demonstrated it with utility scale solar energy storage. Soon they're going to demonstrate it with power walls in your home. But they're a battery company. They've always been a battery company. Elon Musk actually was doing his postgraduate work in capacitors. And so when introduced to an EV, he went immediately to the battery. Why are those similar? If you don't know, I don't want to talk about it. But they're very similar. They're both accumulators. They store energy. And so Tesla's always been a battery company. They are highly motivated to not burn your car down because it's a huge blow to their trying to introduce a new thing anyway with an electric car and their success. So they're committed and motivated to that success. They're not an amateur BMS designer working out of his basement or his little shop in Cape Girardeau. They have engineering talent, and they use it all the time to try to keep these batteries safe. One of the solutions is cooling. One of the key solutions is this little fusible link connecting the batteries. The other solution is a very advanced battery management system consisting of a motherboard in the battery and then BMS subboards on each of the modules. And one of the key aspects of that is not just a brilliant BMS design, but minimizing the exposed wiring connecting the BMS to each of the battery cells. And so that's kind of buried in the Model S module. In the case of this battery, it's actually a piece of flexible PC board with copper runs in it that's taped and glued down both sides of the edge of these battery modules and connected to each of the voltage cells of 46 battery cells in there to feed a BMS board on the end with no wires at all. They're copper lands on a PC board made of a very thin, flexible material that is then laid out on the battery. And so there isn't any wiring. And so there's no spaghetti wiring to burn up because there's no wiring. And I consider it a brilliant design. And then a somewhat over-designed BMS board that we're struggling with right now to talk to. We can talk to it. We've even decoded how it says the battery stuff. We're having a little problem with the ISO SPI power levels and signaling with our first prototype board. And so that work continues. And so we'll stay after it. I'm probably going to reverse myself with the acquisition of our second wrecked Tesla and try to work out the full pack procedure to turn it on. And again, you know, I even get a little paranoid about Tesla and some of the apparently dumb moves they're making. It's just, here's the deal. I'm in a airplane that's going to crash. Fortunately, I know how to parachute, and I know how to make a parachute. And I can make a parachute myself. And I have all the materials in the plane to make a parachute. All I have to do is sew one up, assemble it, put it on, jump out of the plane, and pull the ring before I hit the ground. And that's essentially the situation Tesla's been in. So their timeline on doing things is more of a function of when they can than whether Jack wants them to or not right now at the moment. Amazingly, this past month, they have opened up, and I'll put a link on the screen, their entire parts catalog for the Model 3, or most of it, online, where you can find the specific part number of any part of the car and order some of them. Some of them are restricted. And then later on in the month, they have opened up their service.teslamotors.com schematic service or maintenance information service that they were kind of forced to put up by the state of Massachusetts. It's now open to everyone in all 50 states, and the Model 3 schematics came up. And they have maintenance instructions for the Model 3, a connector cross reference, which is kind of invaluable to me, and full schematic diagrams of the all-wheel drive and the rear-wheel drive and so forth, Tesla Model 3. And I'll put a link up for that as well. And so you can get all this information much more easily than you could. It was not they were holding it a state secret. They were busy sewing up a parachute, trying to get it on before they hit the ground, and stuff like public availability and maintenance information simply didn't make the priority list until they started getting the cars out. By the way, everyone is at Twitter this week. They announced their earnings June 30th, a couple of things about that. And I would offer that it's a fantastic buying opportunity. They're down in the 280s this afternoon, which is amazingly low. They were up, 345 10 days ago. Elon Musk has announced that he's laying off 3,000 people and that their profit would be less than it was in quarter 3. And the ever deranged, actually, financial analysts have just gone berserk on this, punished the stock, and so I'm buying with both hands and with some glee, because none of it even makes sense. What to say about that? Tesla has dropped their 75 kilowatt version of the Model S and the Model X. Why? Why not? They have the Model 3 now. Let's bump up the price, or the average price, the S and the X. You've got the 3 now. And so that's what they're doing. And they're reducing the head count on the S and the X production line. They're going to sell less of them at a higher price. They can do that. They have the Model 3 now. So there's no surprise there at all. They're going to have a lower profit. I don't know if that is Trump or Musk managing expectations or what. You have to understand, I'm entirely against profits at all. I don't think he should be showing a profit of any kind. When you show a profit, you get to write a check to the United States government and the state of California. You're giving my invested money away to government people. If you make any money, put it back in the company to make growth more next year. And if you don't do that, it's corporate malfeasance, fiduciary fraud. Growth companies are supposed to grow, not make money. Whoever heard of such a thing? These investor guys think that's the purpose of having a company. You don't have a technology company to make money. That's absurd. You have a technology company to grow and get bigger next year. And that's what I want them to do. So I don't care what the quarterly profit is, whether it's up or down. It should be around break even and on the negative side of that. And you should take any money that you take from revenues during the year and carefully invest that in making more cars and more and better products next year to maintain the growth curve until you hit the law of large numbers, which is what hit Apple and why they're suffering, and should still buy Tesla. By the way, they laid off 300 people from Project Titan, their electric car company segment. And so I'm not too sure there won't be an announcement here in a little bit for Apple to finally take Jack's advice and buy Tesla and SpaceX outright. In any event, the other aspect of the investment cycle is to recall the 30% short sale interest in Tesla. That was the largest recorded short interest of any stock ever on any of the exchanges here in the U.S. Turns out it's 19% now. A lot of people have been tiptoeing toward the exits there on the short sale side, hoping nobody will notice. They're down to 19%. And so the concept of a short squeeze is growing more remote, frankly, which is probably a healthy thing. But I wouldn't expect many of those people to be tiptoeing back after the haircut they took on that stock. And so at 288, it's a huge buying opportunity. Anything under 300, just throw the kitchen silver at it. I mean, sell the cat, buy Tesla. You can buy the cat back at 3 times the price later. And it'll only be a month or two older. So the huge buying opportunity, they report January 30th, and I guarantee you that after the report of their earnings and their quarterly conference call, the stock will either go up hugely or go down hugely. It doesn't move in little increments. It'll go up or go down. Buy before it goes up, and if it doesn't go up, don't have bought. And that's where you're at on the Tesla stock. That's the inside of the battery. We've taken you all the way to the aluminum and copper foil. I did get a question why they use aluminum on the cathode and copper on the anode. Well, I don't know if I want to answer that. It has to do with the electrical potential of the anode materials and the electrical potential of the cathode materials. And copper is closer to the electrical potential of graphite, and aluminum is much closer to the electrical potential of the anode materials, and it makes it more stable. And that's really the only reason I know of to do that. But it's in almost every case, they use aluminum foil on the cathode and copper foil on the anode side. I'm not gonna. The basic takeaway to remember in a lithium battery is that you pump electrons from the cathode to the anode when you're charging, and that causes a bunch of lithium ions to race across the battery internally to be held by force fields, force charges by the anodes. If you connect the anode and the cathode through an external circuit and allow the electrons who resist each other by field, that potential difference in potential between the negative anode and the positive cathode causes current to flow, and as the electrons go back to the cathode, some of the lithium ions release and chase those electrons right across the inside of the battery to be with them again, not covalently, but just by force field attraction, by field in the cathode. And the capacity of the battery comes by there just being a vast number of lithium ions available to do that. And the more lithium ions you have available, the higher your capacity, and the faster they can transit the internals of that battery, the more power they can produce at any 1 second, any one moment. And that's the basis of the battery. It's not really a chemical process the way we normally think of them. The ions intercalate into crystalline structures on both ends, graphite crystalline at the anode, and kind of a tetrahedral complex crystalline structure at the cathode. And the cathode's where that tends to slow down. And so they can do it faster if it's a thin cathode, and they can have more lithium ions if it's a thick cathode. And that's a trade-off. And so that's boiled down to the basics how a lithium ion battery works. A lithium battery would be made out of lithium, the metal, and that's the solid state battery I was referring to that John B. Goodenough is kind of sponsoring, a Portuguese researcher who's doing most of the work. John's 96 years old now. And so, but he's still my hero and the godfather and inventor of the lithium battery and the lithium ionic battery. This is a lithium ionic battery, runs on ions, cations, and lithium is actually, if you're going to build one, not very large portion of what you're building. In this case, it's mostly nickel and graphite. And the price is largely a function of the manufacturing process and the cost of the nickel. By the way, on the former, I don't even think you know or understand what a brilliant son of a bitch Elon Musk is, and many members of his team. The assembly process of a Model 3 battery was over 7 hours. It's now reported to be over 17 minutes to produce a Model 3 battery. That's just astonishing. Stay with us. Will be more EVTV. Danu, you've been on an adventure.
It's been fun.
First, the battery in the car, after sitting a couple of months in the yards, it just won't hold a charge. So we hooked up we've got a handful of car batteries that are made out of lithium that some little girl in China talked me into. It actually came in pretty useful. We hooked up to that and pulled the battery, 12-volt battery, which is lead acid out of the front of the car. Now, why wouldn't Tesla put a lithium battery for the 12-volt? And I actually ran across a guy that was selling lithium replacement batteries for the 12-volt. Why wouldn't they just do that, Danu?
Why wouldn't they?
Huh?
I don't know.
You don't know? Well, lithium batteries can't be charged at all below 0 degrees centigrade. And that's 32 degrees Fahrenheit. What's the temperature today, Danu, outside here in lovely beachfront Cape Girardeau, Missouri?
What is it? 18? 18 degrees.
18 degrees.
It's cold.
So if we came out and started our Model 3, not that we're having much success there, and we were on the other side of that door,
Yeah.
in the battery is a power control system which charges our lithium battery, but it also makes 12 volts.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what that's going to do? We have to have the 12 volts to start the car,
Yep.
but then we're immediately going to start recharging it. And that causes lithium plating on the anode, the formation of lithium dendrites often. But as we know from many years of lithium iron phosphate cells, it's the death of the cell.
Yep.
And that's why they don't use lithium batteries as the hotel power in the Teslas, because if they recharge them and they're not above freezing, it destroys the batteries. As it turns out, they destroy plenty of them anyway, and it's, of course, the most common replacement part for the Model S and X. I don't know how it's doing on the Model 3, but I'd be surprised if it's different. We plugged in the charger, and it would not charge. And it said that it needed service. Duh. Wasn't hard to get to the 12-volt battery. We don't even have a hood. The whole front end of the car is screwed up to the max. So, and the boys noticed that our airbags are blown. That means the car was probably in a wreck, which would explain all the damage on the front end. But when the airbag blows, it sends a signal to a little device in the battery called the pyrofuse. Do we have one of those around here somewhere? What did we do with the one we just pulled out? Is it on the table over there? What did we do with the pyrofuse?
Things like to disappear very fast.
We've been like this all week. I get tools in, parts in. I only have 3 guys here. And within an hour, nobody knows where the stuff is. It's gone. We just don't have it.
Found it.
The pyrofuse was here just a few minutes ago. Here we are, a pyrofuse. And what did the pyrofuse read on an ohmmeter?
0. I mean, overload.
Overload. It's
So open.
OL. That means it's wide open. And it's set off by the airbag deployment. And in this car, this one was blown. They are available from Tesla. Yarrow tells me they're only about $15. But I had one laying around here. I'm not sure why. I guess when we took apart the other battery, and so we put that in there.
Yes, we did.
And the problem is you have to pull out the pin house. Is that the one we pulled out of here?
Yes, sir.
Hold it up and show it to them a little bit. Man, they've got a nice, pretty one. Our first one was kind of scuzzy looking. This is shiny as a new dime.
Yep.
And so you just popped that out, didn't you, Dano?
We did. It wasn't that easy.
Oh, it didn't just pop out. How
It did
come?
not. They have a new security lock type bolt in there.
Mm-hmm. It
It's
doesn't even come off the thing, does it?
Nope, it's still on there.
We had the first wreck, and it had some torque screws, which used to be kind of a security device. They keep coming up with security screws where you can't take things apart. Well, then people start selling wrenches to take them apart. So then they come up with a new screw and they come up with a new wrench. And so it goes. This is the most mindless battle, if you call it that. I think it's just to get companies to buy screws and us to buy wrenches. But the pin house in the very early Model 3 that we had is a 6-point Torx screw.
Simple.
So we, God, I got mad too. Why can't you take out the pin house? Well, because none of the wrenches work. What do you mean none of them work? I got, $3 bazillion worth of wrenches around here. We've taken everything apart in 6 states. Well, I couldn't get it apart. This is what was holding it together. And it has 5 points. And that there is such a thing as a pentalobe. Well, that's a screw head like the Torx, but it has 5 points instead of 6. Penta means 5, and I have no idea why they call it a pentalobe, but 5 lobes. And so that's not a problem. This is a pentalobe, but it's not a recessed screw head. It sticks out with 5 points. You would need a socket with those 5 points to go over it. And I wish one of our erstwhile viewers who know a whole lot more about these things than I do, never claim to be mechanical, if you'd send me a link to a wrench for a pentalobe, and I'll buy a whole set to get the right size. But it's an inverted pentalobe. It's an outie instead of an innie, if you know naval talk, which is a sailor I do, of course. Spend a lot of time around navals. Well, I was just in port, though. We didn't do that at sea.
Yep.
So we have this 5-point pentalobe. But inverted, it sticks out. And so we need a little pentalobe socket. I can't find any such thing. But that's what we need. Not a Torx, which is 6-point. This is 5-point. And I'll put a photo up there. So, Richard got a thing called the Gator Gripper. Yeah, I'm sure you all know more about this than I do. It's a socket with a whole lot of little wires that are spring-loaded. And so you can countersink that in there up to the hank, and when you turn it, the wires that didn't get smashed back in, kind of, sort of, partially grip it. And that would probably work pretty good on a larger bolt. This is so small, it didn't really work that good, did it?
It took us 2, and we tore through both of them.
Yeah.
2 gator grips.
So they went through 2 gator grips, tearing them up, getting out the pentalobe screws, so we could remove the pin house, so we can access
The pyrofuse.
pyrotechnic fuse. A lot of people would like to simply replace this. I don't see any reason why not. There's a little 2-pin connector goes on there, a little EVTV trick. You need 2 ohms across that, and the car will think it has a pyrofuse. And then if you fashioned a piece of aluminum, about that long, to fit in place of the pyrofuse, you would be fine. And for solar applications or whatever, I don't really think this is necessary in the car at all, and I think you'll see an engineering change removing it before the end of the year. Don't ask me how I know these things. But after Tesla replaces about 1,500 of these that went off fraudulently, and they had to do a service call, I think they'll get religion and see it Jack's way and put in a little 2-ohm resistor and a plate. But I could be wrong. I'm the last guy on the internet. I could be wrong. It might be absolutely vital for your personal safety. And I wouldn't want you harmed in any way. Or Tesla. Or any of our cats, for that matter. Or Richard's rabbit. Everybody should just be safe as shit.
Yep.
But we did want to know what would happen. And guess what happened when we fired it up?
It started charging, and then it stopped.
And then what did it do?
Still saying charging stopped. So.
And then it says charging. And then it says stop.
Yep.
And then it says charging. And then it says stopped. And guess what else it says?
Well, on the side it gave a warning: coolant low.
Coolant low.
Mm-hmm.
Why would that stop the charging?
Could be because the batteries don't have enough coolant, so there might be something that's stopping it.
The whole front end of the car is sticked up. We don't have a radiator, I don't think. There's no coolant in the vehicle. The battery actually does have a liquid detector hooked up to the motherboard. And you have to have coolant flow for it to work. And so it wants that. It's going to be interesting if you try to make the battery work outside the car, as you have to have coolant going through it or it won't charge. I don't know if it'll discharge or not, but I'm thinking not. And so there's a lot of interlocks involved in this. So we can't get the thing to charge. It's about 84% charged. We were just playing with it, and I wanted to see about this pyrofuse. And the pyrofuse did cause it to try to charge, but then it got stopped for low coolant. And next week I'll have them hook up a coolant tank, and we'll bypass the radiator and let the pumps do what the pumps do, which are integrated in the tank, as I recall. We actually, I'm sure, have a radiator, but I'm not going to bother to hook it up. We're not going to get too hot charging, and so we'll try to bypass that next week and get it charging, but it's mostly a teachable moment for our shop technicians, and I don't think we're going to try to make this car run anyway, but I do want to do some can captures on this car. We figured out a good place to connect for can sampling, and I want to play with that a little bit. So we're trying to get this kind of sort of running normally. We're not going to drive it anywhere. I just want it to be mostly operational when I do can capture on it. If it doesn't work out, we can go to the other car. It charges and drives and the whole thing. So that's where we're at, but I wanted you to know about the pyrofuse and that it is necessary to have a good one to get the car to do anything. And so you have to change that fuse. They're $15 or bypass it. The little connector that connects to the 2 pins, put a 2-ohm resistor and you'll be fine. And put a plate. And you can simulate a pyrofuse. And one of Danu's questions was if we change the pyrofuse and we hook up the battery, will it blow again? I said, I don't know, Danu, let's hook it up and see. That's what we do, is blow shit up around here. But I kind of knew that we wouldn't. It is actually a signal caused by an accelerometer that sets off the airbags. And the pyrofuse is part of the airbag deployment system. And so that was why it wanted to be serviced. But when we got it done, it would then start trying to charge, but it would not continue because of the coolant flag. error, whatever. So that's where we're at, playing around with the Model 3, and we're going to continue that. I'm getting 2 calls a day on when our Model 3 battery controller is going to be ready. Picture July or September, or maybe never. We've kind of got our hands full around here right now. We got to get Walt Crumbly's thing out by the end of the month. It's the 25th today.
Yep.
I'm going to guess that's not going to happen, Walter. But we're trying. Actually, we will get it together by the end of the month, but we need to do some testing of it before we send it to you. So that's where we're at on that. But I did want you to know about the change in hardware, because pulling the pinhouse lid, which you can do without dropping the battery, you pull the back seat with 2 braces and take off. How many of these things are there?
18 screws?
18 screws.
Yep.
And you too can have the pinhouse off, and then you can. There's 2 braces you have
4
to pull that have 2 screws in each of those, and then you can access the pinhouse and change the pyrotechnic fuse, and that in a lot of cases will get the cars going. We only really had the driver airbag, steering wheel, and the knee bag go. The other ones didn't, but it still did blow the pyro fuse. And we checked that with a ohmmeter in situ, and it was wide open. And so we changed it. And the charger did start. In fact, it starts a lot. And it stops a lot. In fact, it stops about the same number of times it starts. And it's because it detects insufficient coolant flow through the battery. Or that's my working theory, since that's what it told me right on the screen. And so there you go. So we'll continue playing with Model 3s as we can. We don't have a whole lot of time for it these days. Our version 2 battery controller for the Tesla Model S modules is going bananas. So just fabricating those has kept the boys pretty busy. But we're getting some excellent reports from the guys that are getting them. They like them a lot. And so that's working out pretty well. Stay with us. There'll be more Model 3 and Tesla and solar as we continue forward as best we can. Here's some of the latest drone footage of the Tesla Gigafactory. And I wanted to say a word about that. They've currently got 4.9 million square feet completed of their 13.9 million that they have planned. And as you can see here, they've made a start on their solar array, which will eventually be 70 megawatts in size and power. They currently make more batteries for electric vehicles than all other EV manufacturers combined and their suppliers. The point is, when we talk about John Goodenough and solid state batteries and advances in battery technology, what you're talking about is what would you do with that? Well, the first place you would take it would be Tesla. They're going to be the largest battery manufacturer in the world. They are already the largest battery manufacturer in the world. And so they get dozens of people a day with plans for battery breakthroughs. And they have Dr. Jeffrey Danner at the University of Dalhousie has empowered them to test battery technologies with amazing rapidity for life cycles. And so Tesla is in a position to adopt whatever technology comes along. And any technology that does come along, unless it's developed by Volkswagen, imagine, is going to come to Tesla first. And Elon Musk views second place as being a euphemism for a loser. So I wouldn't expect him to give up that very easily. Anyway, that's the Tesla Gigafactory as it exists today. And I find it astonishing. So stay with us. There'll be more EVTV to come.